What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Campus Reform P.A.S. Report Podcast Edition. I have a great interview lined up today. Before I get to today's guest, make sure that you go to campusreform.org and check it out. The Leadership Institute's Campus Reform does phenomenal work highlighting the liberal insanity, the far left push that we are seeing on college campuses throughout the country. Also, be sure to check out PASreport.com. And I want to introduce today's guest. I have Kenny Xu, who is a journalist, and he's the author of a brand new book, An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. He's the president of Color Us United. It's an advocacy group that advocates for a colorblind society, which is so important in today's day and age. And now I want to welcome Kenny to the PAS Report and Campus Forum interview. Kenny, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Well, I'm glad you could be here because your book's phenomenal. It's coming out at just the right time. I mean, we just had a major Supreme Court ruling on race-based admissions, and I want to get your thoughts. What are your thoughts on the Supreme Court's ruling?
That is a great ruling because it's a new day for our country legally. Really, it's a snapback to what our country's always believed in, which is content of your character matters, not color of your skin. So what if Asians are disproportionately more likely to study and have the habits necessary to succeed in an elite college? So what if Harvard becomes 43% Asian? That's fine. The NBA is 75% Black. The construction industry and hotel entertainment disproportionately Hispanic. What's wrong with that? What's wrong with letting people decide where they want to go and rewarding people according to their merits? That's meritocracy. That's what the Supreme Court made that decision for, and that's why I support it.
And do you think that, or do you have a fear that colleges and universities are going to look to find some backdoor attempt in order to keep the race-based admissions practice alive? Or do you think that they're going to abide by the Supreme Court's ruling?
I think the only college that is probably arrogant enough to do that would be Harvard, and they will lose the instant that they're challenged for it. The Supreme Court was very clear with what they said. You cannot use race directly or indirectly. And also that people who do could be held liable for it. You can now be held liable for damages if you discriminate against Asians in the college admissions process, or anybody, white people as well. So, I mean, does Harvard really want to risk that liability? Does Harvard really want to lose the $500 million in government funding? Maybe they do, but that's an expensive proposition you're talking about that maybe only Harvard could afford. The rest of the colleges in this country probably can't.
Yeah, and you're right about that. And the Supreme Court ruling did say that these universities that continue to practice in race-based admissions can lose federal funding, that it can be pulled from them. And also Harvard has a huge endowment, that's $1 billion endowment. So there's a lot of money there. Now, when we're looking at Color Us Blind, Color Us United, I'm sorry. What Color Us United, you look at a colorblind society. That's the way we advocated for decades. All of a sudden they say, well, if you don't recognize that people are certain colors, well, then you're racist. How do you respond to that? And why did it change?
First of all, I think that this is going to be the next battle for the next 10 years, especially in K-12 schools. The battle between people telling people to see color in people and use it to recognize differences, or the battle from being truly colorblind, which is looking at somebody and not assuming anything about that person based on their skin color. I support the latter. That's the hard stand that I've made in my life and at Color Us United, because that's what America is about. If there's one country in the world that can do it, it's America. But we have to recognize that people come from all different backgrounds and they assimilate to society in different ways, okay? So the fact that I am Asian American, what do you really know about? I have traits that are stereotypical and traits that are not. For example, I'm speaking to you today. A lot of Asian Americans don't typically speak out on issues. So why are we judging people based on traits that have no relationship to their merit? That's what I believe at Color Us United.
And let me ask you about that. I mean, for the last 20 years, we've seen open discrimination towards Asians. It's not like it's been a secret. It's out there publicly. The same people that scream about Asian hate literally have said nothing about the race-based admissions that we see. That they say nothing about the open discrimination against Asians. Why are Asians so quiet?
Well, they're not quite anymore. And look, it took them a little while. Okay, give them some credit. A lot of immigrants, when they came here, it's, when you were the Italians or the Jews, you didn't really participate that much politically for a while. Now they are. But Asians, I think, are in a similar position. They've come here, they've recognized their voice, they're getting active. I'm helping to lead that charge. And also, I'm helping Asian Americans kind of understand that their role is more than just to advocate for Asian Americans, right? Like your culture, your cultural values, your benefit, that represents a lot of Americans of all colors, black, white, everything. We all stand for two-parent family structures. We all stand for studying twice as many hours as the average American, which is what the average Asian American does. It should be about culture, not race. Another issue that I highlight at Color Us United, if you go to our website, colorusunited.org, and sign up to be a part of our movement.
And I think you're hitting on something key, that it's hard work and dedication that Asian Americans have put in to get the good test scores, to actually achieve through merit, and they're openly targeted when it comes to the college and university campuses, as we've witnessed amongst the Ivy League. But you played, and your organization played, an essential role when it comes to the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, in getting them to essentially drop its social justice task force. Can you explain that to the audience for a minute?
One of our major impactful campaigns recently was we targeted UNC Medical School. We're privately funded. We rely on your donations for support, but we were able to really take on one of the largest, most prestigious medical schools in the country, because they were, of course, hiring based on race, not merit. They're also subjecting their doctors to unconscious bias training and proposing to their students that their own medical system is racist. I mean, how divisive can you get? So we came in, this all came from their social justice task force called the Task Force to Integrate Social Justice. We demanded they rescind it. We launched a public campaign based on your signatures. That's why you should go to colorusunited.org, because we need your signatures. And in North Carolina, we were able to get over 5,000 signatures, push the Dean, Wesley Burks, to drop that framework. So that is a success story from Color Us United, because we know that doctors, most Americans, do not care about the race of their doctor. They just want the most qualified doctor.
Yeah, if I'm getting heart surgery, I prefer the surgeon to be the most qualified. I don't care what the color of their skin is or what ethnic background they come from. But this is the bizarre world that we're living in today, where we've actually seen DEI programs, degree requirements, diversity, equity, inclusion degree requirements in every single major, regardless of what it is. What are you doing to other colleges and universities to push back against this movement? Because this is something that I think is probably the biggest fight. And I've been outspoken. The Leadership Campus Forum has been outspoken. You have been outspoken about this. How hard is this battle?
One policy that the Board of Governors at Chapel Hill, the Board of Governors of the entire North Carolina public university system, so UNC, NC State, ECU, they all came together and they did pass the resolution prohibiting the use of DEI statements in tenure, promotion, and hiring. That is an actual policy that is now in place. It's going to be hopefully ratified by the legislature pretty soon, but it's already in place in the system. And that is a model for all of the other universities in the country, because when you're considered for promotion, you should not be considered based on factors like your political beliefs. You should be able to use your private life as you wish, within a certain realm of reason, but use your private life as you wish, especially with regards to your politics, for sure. So I supported that decision, and I'm glad that they did that. It's a model for the nation.
It certainly is. And I think that more people need to speak out and push back against these initiatives, because they are extremely damaging to our society. And it does factionalize our society, put us into these little tribes and then pit the tribes against each other, as we've witnessed. Now, one of the things, again, that Leadership Campus Forum we've been reporting on, and that your book touches on that's so important, is how a lot of colleges and universities are eliminating standardized testing as part of their admissions process. So again, can you explain to the audience why they're eliminating standardized testing and how it actually impacts the Asian American community?
I don't even just want to talk about the Asian American community, because my new book, School of Woke, I'm done with affirmative action. We won. I honestly don't want to talk about it anymore. It's talking about Harvard makes me sick. I want to talk about K-12 education, because the one place where Black Americans are really suffering in this country is the education system. It's clear in School of Woke, my new book, I actually went into the schools and determined why. And one of the reasons is because they've dropped standardized testing. And I'll tell you why. What happens is that when you don't have an incentive metric to, make sure that these kids are performing at grade level based on standardized tests, schools will they'll water down grades, they'll water down teaching quality.
Can I just interrupt you
kids.
for 1 second? So my state, New York State, the cesspool of New York that I'm in, we were performing twice below the national average in the proficiency exams. And so the New York State Board of Regents, rather than that being a red flag saying we have to correct the deficiencies that exist, what they did instead was they actually dropped the definition of what it means to meet basic proficiency. So just wanted to touch on that for you.
Goodness. There you go. I mean, if you water down the standards and you change the meaning of basic proficiency, then okay, fine, you'll get the kids to pass, but are they actually going to be successful in our country? Absolutely not. That's going to widen the rich-poor gap in our country. That's going to widen the white-black gap in our country in education. I care about minority education. That's why I'm advocating so much for the inclusion of these tests, for teacher training based on merit, for promotion based on merit, and you'll find stories about why this is having such a negative effect in my new book, School of Woke.
And in your book, you also talk about other solutions as well of trying to fix the defects of the public education system. So I know you're busy, but can you give a few of those other things that ordinary people, parents, students themselves, and even teachers, because I find a lot of teachers are fed up with the dropping of standards, with the profession just being totally beaten up, not by parents, but by actual administrators that are lowering the standards, that are diminishing the value of teaching as a profession. So can you give some solutions to the audience?
I think one thing that woke administrators, and I do say woke administrators because they were groomed in the education schools teaching woke teaching training, which I talk about. One thing that they do is they exploit uneducated parents. Lots of, for example, illegal immigrant parents get put into this, like their kids get put into a born in Mexico category, and then boom, immediately ESL, boom, immediately. Doesn't matter how smart you are, you're going to be grouped with all the rest of the Mexicans, and they're going to lower their standards in these tests, and you will not learn English. The studies are clear. You only have a limited amount of time to really learn a separate language. And if you don't do it within a certain 10-year span, your English is going to be doomed in a country where English is more important than ever. So I think that's another way that woke administrators take advantage of the lowering of standards, because of course they want to pass these kids. They don't want to do the hard work of actually immersing these kids in English. We don't want to do the hard work of figuring out what to actually do with illegal immigrants in this country, especially when they take up space in our public education system, which they do. And that's why we're having a lot of the problem with illegal immigrant capital in this country.
Yeah, and the bloated bureaucracies in the public school system is actually outrageous. What are your thoughts on something like school choice? Do you think that school choice is potentially an avenue that could fix some of the defects? It's not going to fix everything, but fix some of the defects?
I support it. I don't want it to just be a buzzword. When people say school choice, what do they mean? Yeah, expanding charter schools, because charter schools are doing well. But let's be honest, charter schools, they can be selective sometimes. They can be selective of their students, because you have to have an involved parent to actually, send your kid, to actually desire to send your kid to charter schools. I've talked with charter school parents, like if they're low information, you're not going to be a charter school parent. You have to be fairly high information. So I also support reforming the public system through public school choice. And what I mean by that, as I talk about in School of Woke, is within the public school system, alert parents that they can, choose your they have some level of choice in their teachers. They have some level of choice in the high school that their kid goes to, and the specialty that they want their kid to go to. I talk about a model in Henrico County, Virginia, where they had 5 or 6 different high schools that each had different specialties that you could send your kid to. It really empowers the parents. And the purpose is to build the relationship with the parent and the school that I think is lacking right now.
And again, I think you're bringing up a great point, and what you just said is the key. It's empowering parents. We should empower the parents. We should empower the students. That ultimately they're the ones that should drive the education of their children. And if the school is failing, well, that parent should be able to put their child in a more successful school. So, as far as the audience goes, what's one thing that you really wanted them to take away from your book?
I really want them, because people really don't know this, but I really want people to take away that what is a superintendent's role and what is a teacher's role within the school system. I mean, if you're a superintendent, you're basically a manager you're like a CEO of your school district. You're managing all the big decisions. You are managing the businesses that your school contractors come with. And we have no accountability measure for superintendents. Our only accountability measure is the school board. And if most school boards, you guys know this, are very low information school boards. They're not very motivated to join school boards or do those kinds of things. So superintendents have become have had a greater ability to influence a school district more than ever. And sometimes if you elect the wrong one, if you elect a woke superintendent growing up in these critical race theory informed paradigms, they're going to select the businesses that are not the best for your children, but best for the activist wing of the Democratic Party. And that's why we have to be vigilant.
Yeah, and I'm still amazed on Long Island. Some superintendents make as much as the sitting president of the United States. And I'm like, that's just insane to me. It's supposed to be a civil service position. And it really does. It really is astounding. Are you optimistic? Take school boards, for instance. It used to be if 5 parents showed up to a school board, that would be a lot. That's the way it was. Today, we're seeing school board meetings packed with people. Does that leave you with a sense of optimism that things are changing?
I think so, if they can direct their attention to the right things. Remember that school should be about the improvement of teaching and learning. That's what it should be about. Everything should be geared around the teacher-student experience. Remember that that's the number one thing you need to fix, is the teacher-student experience. And we've been spending 3 times as much money on the public school system as we have in 1980, adjusted for inflation, and the racial achievement gap hasn't closed, and standards have dropped. Why? Because we spend all this money on things that are ancillary to the teaching experience, to the teaching learning experience, whether it be on, whether it be on things that are good, like mental health counseling and things, or just things that are actively bad, like DEI officers, and a lot of things in between, lawyers, contractors, those kinds of things. We've been spending the money on the wrong things. So one thing that people can really do at school board meetings that I talk about in my book is that they can encourage the school board to determine the places that the money is going. Where is your money in your school going? You follow that money, you identify that, you see how that's being actually implemented in the classroom, and that's when you can make a positive change for your kids.
I find it amazing how we spend more money than any other country on education. In New York, we're spending $35,000 per student per year. That's New York City. New York State is $29,000 per student per year. And yet the basic proficiency levels, only 13 to 25%, depending on the subject area, are meeting basic proficiency levels. It really is an indictment on the entire education system. And Kenny, everyone needs to check out An Inconvenient Minority, The Attack on Asian American Excellence and the Fight for Meritocracy. Everyone needs to check out Color Rush United, and we're going to have links up. Kenny, I really appreciate you coming on the program today.
Awesome. Thank you.